And as I said, I was never going to be like my dad. I picked up a drink at 17 and it spat me out in the gutter at about 34. I lived that way for about 3 or 4 years. Well, I was out with my mates and someone had some beer and I'll never forget it was a bottle of Coroyo whiskey. I'll never ever forget that.
Hey, I'm Ange.
And I'm Beck.
And we are the Gold Diggers. Because we believe there's gold found in everyone.
Everyone is unique, interesting and exciting with a great story to share.
And we aim to find it.
The question is, can we rise to the challenge and strike gold?
Honey, you're my sugar.
So today's guest talked about a moment when he was homeless, sleeping rough on the streets, and he went behind the bins and he decided in that moment that if I stay here, I will not be here tomorrow. And that moment changed his life. And it's a really impacting story of how he recovered.
Yeah, it was lovely having Jim on the show today. And Jim has really gone from the worst of life to making a decision to make his life better and to make other people's life better as well.
So if alcohol or addiction is an issue that is impacting you or your family or someone that you love, this is a really interesting and important story for you to listen to, because Jim is such a beacon of hope and he's 82 years old and he's lived to tell the tale.
Honey, you're my sugar.
So this is how it works. One of us knows our special guest and the other doesn't. And today, Beck is going to interview our guest, who is Jim Dawson.
Yes.
And here's 3 little facts about him.
Yes.
He's 82 years old.
Yeah.
So he's born in 1941. He's a grandfather of many. And he has been sober for many years. So sounds like there's an interesting story here with Jim. And
yes, I'm looking forward to meeting Jim. So let's welcome Jim in, shall we? Come on in, Jim. Welcome to the show, Jim. Nice to have you here.
Oh, thanks, Angela.
Thank you for coming. And so you were born in 1941, so that would make you 83?
Yep,
yes. Lovely. And
I said 82.
Yeah.
So it shows I can't count.
right in the middle of the Second War.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, that's a bit of a story there too.
Yeah.
So were you born in Australia?
Yeah, in Sydney.
Yeah, right. So was your father in the war at the time?
No, he was an air raid warden.
Yeah.
He was medically unfit for the army. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And what was those early years like for you growing up, having been born in the middle of the war?
Oh, I've got a lot of memories. I've got some memories of when the Japs torpedoed and bombed the harbour.
Wow.
Well, I was only tiny, but I remember I was under the kitchen table with my mum.
Right, wow.
You know, but other than that, no, there's not a lot other than the...
What is it you remember about that? Is it the sound of it?
The sound of it,
Yeah.
What you don't know what's going on. I'm only like 2, 3, 4 years old, something like that. You know, yeah.
I imagine it's a sound that stays with you, though.
Oh yeah, it's the sound that stays with you. I also remember all the rationing and stuff like that. You know, lining up with mum to get half a loaf of bread and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And it was not a nice time, but anyhow.
Yeah.
Well,
And that was the Second World War. So did you see society improve? Did you notice it as it improved after the war?
Yeah, it impacted on a lot as I grew up because we moved from Glebe in Sydney
Yeah.
to a housing emission place at Sutherland in the southern suburbs, which was like going from this place to a 1,000-acre farm.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, it was a big block of ground and we started to go up there. But my dad had a drinking problem
Yeah.
and he was occasionally violent and I swore I would never, ever be like my dad.
Right.
But, according to my late wife, I was nowhere near as violent as he was, but I was just a bigger drunk.
Right.
I was talking the other day there, going over the stuff I've learned over the last 46 years, and I can see in families I grew up with, there was a lot of that drunkenness, domestic violence and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because I know friends that have had all that sort of stuff and things that have gone wrong in families. Families have broken up, just like mine did eventually.
Do you think that came from the experiences of the fathers in the war and they turned to alcohol?
Yeah, Yeah, I've done a lot of research on this.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that it all builds up in the background. The analogy I use with people I work with, I still sponsor people in AA, is the garbage trucks that go around, okay? Well, they pick all the stuff up, but they compact it, push it. But sooner or later, if they don't empty the truck, it's going to burst.
Yeah.
Human beings, being as smart as we are, we don't get rid of this stuff. We just push it back and back and back and back. And we erupt, whether it's alcohol, drugs, domestic violence or whatever, So I had experience of that all through, and as I said, I was never going to be like my dad. I picked up a drink at 17 and it spat me out in the gutter at, I said 37, but it was about 34.
Yeah, right.
I lived that way for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
I lived in the gutter of the park bench drunk in Sydney, and my wife and kids had long gone.
That's a very difficult place to get out of when you're at that point in, the journey of alcohol.
Was.
So were you sleeping rough on the streets of Sydney?
I'd sleep on streets, parks, benches. Sometimes I became a couch surfer.
Yeah.
And, people that put, but they wouldn't put up with me for long.
What do you think led you into drinking? Because you were obviously turned off it from watching your dad be a drunk, but then you picked up a drink at age 17. Was that because you were with friends, or what led you to
I was
do
out with my mates, and someone had some beer, and I'll never forget it was a bottle of Coroyo whiskey. I'll never ever forget that. And I got as drunk as. And they took me home, knocked on the door, and took off. And my old man opened the door, and I fell in, and he thought it was funny.
Right.
My mum was horrified.
Yeah.
And but that eased down. We had the mates, we used to drink, and all that sort of stuff as you do as teenagers. But I got married and I had a couple of kids, and it gradually got worse. I stopped many, many times, but never stayed stopped.
Right.
And my wife would say, for God's sake, go and have a drink. I can't stand you around the house. The kids can't go near you, And eventually she went. And I continued on like that for a number of years. I ran into an old mate from school who was into drugs. He showed me how to smoke marijuana and how to use prescription drugs in ways they're not supposed to be used and stuff like that. So I degenerated more and more and more, and I got to that point where, the unemployable, homeless. And I got to a point one night, I still got no idea what happened to me. I slept, yes I do. I slept out. The St Vincent de Paul's places, they have those big bags they used to put clothes and stuff in.
Yeah.
I slept behind 3 of those. I took some of the clothes out of there because it was cold.
Yeah.
And through the night, whatever happened, I got up the next morning, I knew I had to do something or I would not be here. Prior to that, a woman had come back into my life. Her and her brother and myself, we go back to kindergarten together, and that's a long way ago.
Yeah, well.
And she turned up back at the pub where I used to go, and her husband had died of this disease, and she had lost her children, and she's addicted to alcohol and prescription drugs. The Salvation Army bloke was trying to help her. She gave me 20 cents to go and make the phone call, but I had nothing.
Yeah.
And then nagged me for another hour till I went and made the phone call. And he come down and saw me at Sutherland Railway Station in the park there. A lot of my life spent in parks. And he took me over to the post office. He made a phone call. He got me into the William Booth Rehab Centre in Sydney, in Surrey Hills.
Yeah.
He didn't give me any money. Very smart. He got me a one-way ticket to Central, a little chocolate bar and a newspaper, and away I went.
Wow.
Now, I was filthy, absolutely filthy dirty. I'd soiled all my clothes. I weighed 41 kilos,
Wow.
wringing wet. And these people didn't tell me to go away. They took me in and helped me, And the doctor, he was also a recovering person.
Yeah.
He said, Jim, he said, in my opinion, you should already be dead.
Wow.
I said, well, I'm not, so what are we going to do with me? And he said, oh, cheeky too. The only thing I never ever lost was the sense of humour and the ability to laugh at myself.
Yeah.
So I started the journey there. I was 8 days in detox. It's usually 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I was 8 days in detox, and he tells me later on that I'd had 7 seizures during that first 4 days.
Wow.
Well, I'm going to say when I sobered up, but when I things started to clear up a little bit, I'd found I couldn't walk. I went to get out of bed and fell on the floor. And the doctor again, he said, that's the onset of alcoholic poisoning.
Wow.
And he said, your body's starting to shut down. The next thing was I couldn't read. Now, I've been an avid reader all my life. I couldn't read. There's books there and and I couldn't write. One of the things you had to do, write out some of the stuff in the AA Big Book, So a young Salvation Army lass sat alongside my bed, read to me from the Alcoholics Anonymous book and the Good News Bible, and sort of nursed me through the early stages.
How did you feel about these people looking after you? Did that really touch you?
I couldn't work out why, because everybody else told me to bugger off.
Yeah. So that would have been very different for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was. Wow, what's happening here? And why didn't I know about this before?
Yeah.
Well, that's something that's I've helped people in recovery as well, and I know that's very difficult to accept help of somebody.
Yep.
And really, to recover, it is a personal decision that you want to change, regardless of the help that comes in. It's kind of a personal responsibility, isn't it? That you make that decision for yourself.
Right. You have to make that decision. It's in our little 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book in AA. The very first paragraph in the first step in the 12 steps we take is, who cares to admit complete defeat? Why, practically no one, of course. Because glass in hand, you warped your life to such an extent that only an act of providence can save you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of sort of what I realised, that I didn't want to be like I'd been, I stepped back to 1977. Christmas Day 1977, I sat on a park bench in a beachside park at Cronulla with a hamburger I couldn't eat and nowhere to go. I wasn't wanted anywhere.
Yeah.
No, was not wanted, And so I started this journey, and I went into long-term rehab.
Yeah.
Which at that point in time they had a rehab farm at the back of Morisset on Dora Creek. And it was 186 acres, I think. We had a dairy, piggery, vegetable garden, plant nursery, all that sort of stuff, and general things there. Palm chores. And we also had a chapel, a log cabin chapel, built there. And we had 2 chapel services a week on whatever step we happened to be studying that week. And that's where it all started to grow. We went to outside AA meetings. We went to a really good one at the Morisset State Hospital. Now, that's a state asylum over there for the criminally insane.
Yeah.
But our bus used to stop outside the thing with the Korsakoff syndrome's patients, and that's the people that don't know who they are, why they are, or where they are. And the bus driver said, "This is what you're looking at, fellas." Now I know that there were people in recovery, like you said, that really didn't want to be there. They'd been sent there by the courts maybe, or the boss had given them an ultimatum, and so they go there. But I wanted to be there, And my very first sponsor, the bloke that helped me a lot, was a fellow that passed away last year, Stevie Wright, from the Easy Beats.
Right.
And he was absolutely amazing help to me.
Yeah.
Wasn't much help to himself in the long run, but although he was 24 years sober when he died, he'd had a couple of strokes and stuff like that,
Yeah.
But that started me on the path back. And
was this in Newcastle?
Yeah, Morisset, yeah.
Okay, so when I lived in Newcastle, because my parents are Salvation Army officers.
Well, you know.
And we used to have the guys come from the Morisset Rehabilitation Centre to our church.
Yeah, yep.
And they used to sing One Day at a Time, Lord Jesus. And
one day at a time.
You remember that one?
Yeah,
yes, I remember that song.
That's all I want,
so,
one day at a time.
Isn't that amazing? It's a small world. So
would it have been around the same time?
Yeah.
This was in the 80s.
In the 80s, yeah. I was there in 1978, 79.
Okay, well, this would have been around 86, 87, 88.
A bit after.
Yeah, and we actually went as a church to the Morisset Rehabilitation Centre to perform some songs and things.
So that's where it all started for me, and I was 7 months, I think, 7.5 months. But during the interval, we were there 5 months. We had an open day, and my 15-year-old daughter come up with a boyfriend, and she got out of the car. The first thing she said is, "My dad's back."
Yeah, wow.
She said, "I knew that other person wasn't my dad." She didn't recognise me in hospital.
Yeah, wow.
No, Neither did my young brother. He brought her in. Until I spoke, he said, I didn't know it was you.
Yeah.
Wow.
He said, you were yellow, you were just skin and bone,
Yeah.
you know. Okay, so I'm not there now. But, yeah, she came up, the first thing she says, my dad's back,
Wow.
you know. And we spent a bit of time together there, and then, yeah, it gradually and very slowly improved from there. I went back to Sydney. I lived and worked in William Booth.
Mm-hmm.
They employed me as a counsellor and offered to pay me to go to uni to become a qualified counsellor, which I did.
How was that experience for you then? You were sleeping rough. You now are in recovery. You've come out, finding normality, finding normal life.
Yeah.
How was that
yeah.
transition for you?
So I decided, part of the program is to make amends to people you've hurt.
Yeah.
To go and talk to my mum, make amends there. So I got up enough courage, caught the train in from Sydney up to Sutherland, and I went down there and knocked on the door. John home. First time I got to the top of the street and I wouldn't go down. I turned around and went back again. When I did get there, I knocked on the door. She opened the door, and the first thing she said is, "You can't stay here." I said, "I don't want to stay here, Mum. I've got somewhere to stay.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you."
Yeah.
So we sat and talked for hours. You
Yeah.
know? Now that was that part. That was start there. My mum and I had a really good relationship from that point on.
So a lot of healing happened.
A lot of healing happened, and my old grandma, old Nana Meach, she never said much. She had the half glasses we wear. She'd look over the top of the glasses, actually give you the look.
Did they?
All mothers have that look.
They give you the look. So I'm a couple of years sober, and I got invited along to a Christmas party there. My Nana was there, and I walked in. Give me your hand. Show me your hand. She took my hand, and she said, "We lost you for a while, son, but it's good to have you back." That's all she ever said to me.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And I thought, wow.
Yeah.
And that's
So how did that impact your life then so you've done this whole cycle of not wanting to be an alcoholic like your dad to then falling into that alcoholism and then coming out of it and realising that there were people there waiting for you to come out of that. How did your life then turn around, and what have you done with that since?
what have I done with that life since? Oh, I've done lots of stuff. My youngest son, Ben, just came out at the beginning of this month from Hong Kong for my birthday.
Oh, nice.
And he coerced his daughter, my youngest daughter, and her husband to come up from Melbourne for my birthday. And I didn't know, because I hadn't seen them for about 8 years,
Yeah.
you know.
That's been a nice
we
surprise.
had an amazing few days we had together, you know, catching up and talking about things we'd done in the past and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and they're all good. You know, you say, what's it like? It's mind-boggling at times. You know, I sat back the other night and I was thinking, I put a little post up on Sober Seniors that I'm a member of, but I was reflecting in here all the things that have gone down in the last 46 years, you know, and the things I've done, my counselling diploma. I worked for Lifeline for 10 years. I had my own counselling centre for 9 years, you know.
That's great.
As a counsellor, you mentioned something earlier about part of the AA program is to make amends and to undo the wrongs, and you've been through that process.
Yep.
How important is that process
It's very important.
to become whole again?
Very important, yeah. Currently I work a lot on emotional sobriety,
Yeah.
and I said that's one of the biggest stumbling blocks in recovery, whether it's drugs or alcohol, is your emotions. Because you grow up like a bloke, you know, you're tough, you don't need to talk about. And I've got a whole string of those in the family. You know, she'd be right, mate, have another beer, you know, sort of attitude. So your emotional sobriety is what you are going to keep falling over. It's what lurks in the back of here, you know. I tried to explain to my niece, when you start to drink alcohol, it immediately crosses the blood-brain barrier and starts to change your brain. Simple as that. You may not go down the path that I went down, and many others have gone down, but it does change the brain. You know, and I said, you said to me that when they got together there, a whole bunch of them there, that they're all adults, they can make their own decisions. I said, in this particular event, the 5 people in question, the alcohol is making the decisions, not them. You know, and
it's interesting you say about the emotional side of it, and not like growing up not talking as a man.
Yep.
And you were saying earlier that humans tend to compress everything and then put it in the back of their mind.
Yep.
But that's really where communication comes, isn't it? And men being allowed to talk about things as they go along to prevent something like that, would you say?
Yeah, so when you start to recover and all this stuff starts to surface again, whew, that's where you need a sponsor, you need a counselling. That's the other thing I encourage people to go to counselling. There's a lot of people come in, males as well, have been sexually abused, domestic violence victims, emotional abuse. It all adds up, and you're not going to find all the answers in a 12-step program. You know, you'll point you in the right direction, but if you need outside counselling, please go and have it. You know,
Because it's really about stepping out and looking for help, not letting it get to you.
There's not enough of it there, and quite often it's far too expensive.
Yeah.
You know, I have one of my granddaughters is going through that now, a little bit over 2 years and a bit. Her husband tried to kill her, tried to strangle her. The eldest girl, he was 10. Yeah, called the police, and they took him away, locked him up because he off his face. He got out the next day and went and killed himself.
Oh, wow.
You know, so she's been dealing with that, and she's dealing with that with a drink, you know. And she wouldn't talk to Pop because she knew what Pop was going to say. So I tried a couple of times, but no.
So how do we break the cycle of this? Because I can see the evidence of there's repeated patterns that run through family lives.
There is,
that.
yeah.
And you've obviously broken that now, but you fell into it for a period of time. So how does someone break the cycle
Well,
of that?
one of the things I looked at, you know, my father consistently told me that I'd never amount to anything. Nothing I said was right. Nothing I did was right. None of my friends were right. So it was obviously there was something wrong with me. You know. Then I realised years later when I was working on this stuff, he was talking about himself. He was. His dad was a drunk. He died in the streets of Newcastle.
Right.
In 1952, I think. Yeah. And my dad died in the streets of Sydney the year I started to get sober. You know, I didn't know that until much later. But there's a whole lot of the family stuff, as you said, and that impacted on me. And I thought, well, okay. I realised that he was talking about himself. He was not talking about me at all. Because I'd done quite well, but apart from till I picked up a drink and brought it all undone again. But I've done quite well since then. You know, well enough that my foster children, if I can call them that, my son rang me in February and said, "I've got to talk to you about your birthday, Dad." I said, "Why?" He was in England. And I said, "Why? I guess my birthday's not till May." He said, "No, there's something you got to do." And what have I got to do? You got to get a passport. He'd been working with the rest of the family members for the previous 2 years. I had a 5-week holiday overseas for my 70th birthday.
Oh, that's lovely.
Wow. You know, and these are the rewards. They're very good.
Yeah.
You know?
And how many years have you been sober now?
How many years? 46.
Yes, 46. That's excellent.
Couple more than Kerry.
Well, that's excellent. And now you're counselling others, is that right? And you're speaking at different engagements, is that right?
Yeah,
Do you talk to other people about your experience?
Yes, I've done that. I've done lots of work here on the coast with it, when we have the Alcohol Drug Awareness Month.
So what kind of advice do you give to people who are going through those things? When you're speaking on the radio, what kind of guidance do you give people?
Well, we look. I always push the fact that you can do something about yourself. You don't have to stay where you're at. And if you're an alcoholic, some people say that you never tell a person that you think you're an alcoholic. I do. You know, because I heard of a bloke that looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, and it smells like a duck. It's a duck. You know. You know.
Yeah.
And, this is the thing, because there's no use beating about the bush, I don't believe, personally. Because if someone had been upfront with me, maybe I would have stopped early, but that's gone by the boards. But, you know, I don't do the same things, I don't think the same way.
Yeah.
You know?
So you didn't realise that you're an alcoholic when you were an alcoholic? Took a while?
No, I didn't
think you were.
You know, I'd seen what my old man was doing.
Yeah.
He was a bit violent, of course, and steal money out of our wallets and stuff. But yeah, I thought, oh, well, I'll never get that bad.
You talked about a moment earlier where I think you went behind some rubbish bins or something, and you said, I have to get help because if I won't be here tomorrow.
Yep.
What was the deciding thing in that? What was there something that in particular had happened? Was it
I've got
something
no
physically
idea.
you were
Something happened that night that
Yeah.
shifted my thinking.
Yeah. Do you know what that was?
I don't know whether the man upstairs come in and give me one up the back of the head or not, but
So yeah, because what was different about that? Because I'm sure there's probably many times that you'd been behind those bins before or in a situation like that.
I've never stopped to analyse it really because I didn't want to spoil it. Whatever happened, you know.
Yeah.
And it changed my life. As my granddaughter said to me that last week, Pop, she said, you've turned your whole life upside down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said, yeah, well, you could do the same.
Could it even be a sense of mortality? You think?
Oh,
this is, you know, the way I'm going now. It's going to end in my life.
Yep.
So, is it a survival moment at that point? Do you
Survival moment. I looked around me. I saw others that I'd grown up with and gone to school with. Some of them had died from suicide, car crashes, drunk, drugged out, you know, and all that sort of stuff. Others in the family with the domestic violence and incest in a couple of families, you know, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it's just the people I'd grown with were shattered. And outside of Sutherland, there used to be a shanty town with all the drunks. This came about after the end of the Second World War. You know?
Yeah.
And Father Dunlea, who started Boys Town in there, he also helped to get AA started in Australia as well. You know, and it was and he set up a place called Christmas House, which my father had been in a few times. I later discovered. You know? And then, as you sober up, and as I worked in the field in Sydney, I would run into counsellors and people from other centres down there that knew me. How do you know me? Come in here, come in the office. Pulled out the door. There you are. I'd been at like Matthew Talbot, Swanton Lodge was still going then, Langton Clinic. I'd been in all these places and didn't remember it. You know, and that's the thing. But these things sort of hit you really, really hard. You know, even when still drinking and stuff. You know, you'd be out and you'd run into someone about 2 or 3 days or a week later. Geez, you were in a good mood the other night. Why? Where did you see me?
Yeah.
You know, and that'd start.
How important were other people in your recovery journey? Because from what I know, people that, you know, when you're at the stage where you're sleeping rough on the streets, probably there's no family members around anymore. No. Probably all your friendships have gone. And there really is you're on your own at that moment, aren't you? And it's very difficult to shift perspectives and get the motivation to get out of that. Yeah,
I could put that back to one of the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson. He had a little hut built at the end of his property there called Wits End. And that's where you're at. You're at your wits' end. Whatever you've got left is simply survival. Not existing, it's not living.
And so how important were other people in your process of recovery, people that came in and believe in you and bring you hope in that moment that there is hope that you can recover?
Oh, it's really, 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 really good. You know, I have a brother who has said to me on occasion, you haven't had to drink for a long while, you could have a drink now and again, couldn't you? No. Don't want to start it all over again.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And that's the thing of it. Now, my young daughter in Melbourne, 19 years ago, we nearly lost her. She'd been drinking a lot and smoking a lot of dope and causing all sorts of havoc. And her husband gave her an ultimatum that she'd do something about herself or the marriage was over. So she booked herself into a detox down at Footscray in Melbourne. And a while later I got a phone call from a hospital down there that a parent never wants to get. Mr. Dawson, yeah. Your daughter Nicole's been brought in comatose from a drug overdose. Oh. You know? So that started a battle with her, and then she gave them permission to ask me to fill them in on her background. So I did. Oh, she never said anything about it. I said, well, the girl's been sexually abused and physically abused and stuff like that. She's not going to talk to you, but she wants me to talk for her, so that's what I'm doing. And end result of that was she became a nurse.
Wow.
in the hospital, and she's still in that profession. Yeah,
Yeah, wow.
2 more children since then.
Yeah.
You know, so sometimes really good things come out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jim, it's really been great talking to you today. One last question I have for you is, what legacy do you want to leave on the world after everything that you've been through? What do you want to be remembered for?
Well, I think I've been doing that because I've helped an awful lot of people overcome their addictions. I have, I think, 7 people that I've prevented from suiciding. You know, I've helped people save themselves. It's really, really good when you see the light come back in someone's eyes
Yeah.
who desperately didn't. You know, and that's rewarding stuff like that.
Yeah.
And of course, all my kids, 15 grandkids,
Wow.
7 great grandkids.
Wow, that's a lot of
Yeah.
grandkids.
Jim,
All in
you
all,
are such a beacon of hope to the community, and love to hear how you have just impacted so many lives. But there's some gold to be revealed here, and it's time for you to do that, Beck.
There is a lot of gold in you, Jim, and you've had a very broad life of experiences, haven't you? You've
Yep.
seen a lot. You really have. And you've seen a lot of awful things.
Yep.
You've experienced
Yep.
a lot of awful things. You've lost loved ones. You've
Yep.
gone through to hitting rock bottom, living on the streets, but you didn't give up. You actually found your way out of that. And there is a hope that lives within you that pulls you through those hard things and has pulled you through to now flip your life the other way and become the beacon of hope for other people, like Ange said. And it's like being a lighthouse, isn't it? So for your family, even though there have been generations of alcoholism and abuse and things, you've actually been the one to say, this stops here. And from here on in, you're doing what you can do to show them a better way of living. And that's going to change your grandchildren, your grandchildren, and their children as well because of the decisions that you have made. So that's the gold I see in you, Jim. And that's
Beautiful.
a great life choice to make, isn't it? And having a massive ripple effect on those around you.
Yeah, it is, you know, and it doesn't matter which way I turn, I can always find me
Yeah.
in somebody's story. There's
Well,
always
that's
some.
the power of story, isn't it?
Yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. I know it's really going to impact so many people that maybe this issue is impacting their family or themselves in some way, and it's going to really bring great hope. So thank you so much for being with us, Jim. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Jim.
that.
No worries, I enjoyed it. Yeah.
So that's it for today's podcast. You'll find us on all the major podcast platforms. The podcasts come out every Wednesday. We'd love to hear from you on our socials, the Gold Diggers Podcast. Tell us about your story so we can find the gold in you.
Easy as pie, lemon, apple, or cherry. Loving you is so very sweet, sweet, sweet. How can it be such a piece of cake? And your smile is the icing. Loving you is a party. Honey, you're my sugar.